Hello, I'm Gregory, an artist and designer here at Circa 1990. Today I'm really excited to introduce you to my retrospective series on Festival of Britain. In 1951, Britain hosted the Festival of Britain. It was prescribed as the tonic to the nation. It was about optimism and hope and showing what Britain does really well. It was in the wake of the Second World War. It was the end of the British Empire, and Britain was feeling quite low, and the idea was to produce an exhibition which was open to the whole country, and there were many exhibitions dotted about the country, but the main festival was in London on the London South Bank. I collected images and I attended seminars and webinars. It was during the pandemic, and because of lockdowns, a lot of events have moved online, and this enabled me to go and view other resources and attend these seminars. Eventually, I had accumulated an awful lot of information. I had hundreds of pictures. I'd watched lots of interviews. Eventually, I found so much information and accumulated it all onto my computer. I had hundreds of pictures, I had watched interviews, I had attended seminars, and now I really wanted to return these and make an illustration series from these. Obviously, the festival was one event and it happened over a couple of months, and then it closed down and much of it was destroyed. So I'm unable to go and visit it. There are some buildings which still exist, like the Royal Festival Hall still exists, but most of the South Bank Festival was taken down right after the event. So I wanted to produce something original, and the resources I had gave me some information and some clues about how I could do that. It happened in an era when lots of people didn't have cameras, or the quality was nowhere near what it is like today. So I wanted to be able to take their images, but I wanted to also make it my own. I didn't want to produce a direct replica of the photographs that were taken. And the way I thought about doing this was using my source images, and I made a couple of sketches and wanted to see about trying a new perspective. But I quickly realised that there was just so much information. Trying to hold all of this information in my head or put it down onto the page was incredibly difficult. It's quite complicated because you have like a snapshot of a photo of a person and then a building in the background. But then I want to see that building, but see it in a different perspective, which is either pleasing to me or which I think would make a better print. Taking these prints and initial illustration sketches, I decided the best route for this was to rebuild Festival of Britain in a computer model. I took these into SketchUp, and as a reference, I used the festival guide. And in the festival guide, there's a map. And the map's fairly accurate, but there's no scaling. So what I did is I did some research and I thought about what were the key points, and you've got the skyline and the dome, and these here were quite famous and popular. And as a result, there's some information recorded about it. Now, the dome was published and they had a diameter, so I was able to bring this in and scale my drawing to the diameter of the dome, and also the height of the skyline. And with that, I was then able to build the buildings on top of it. The other buildings are all made by eye, essentially. I had photographs, and with these photographs, I was able to, see the details. So this is the shot tower. I was able to draw the details, and I know it's all fairly relative. So if I think about a person who's about 1.8 meters tall, that gives a good scaling, and I can scale up. And then with all the buildings around there, which I can see in photographs, I can think, oh well, that is so much higher, and therefore that needs to be that height. Also, looking at the buildings, I could say, for example, this building is mostly a rectangle, but if I break it in half, that's a square. And by dividing these squares into 3, that gives the columns of this building, which is the transport building. Another real invaluable resource was Britain from above. And Britain from above is it's a bit like Google Maps or Google Earth, but from the past. And essentially it's just when planes were flying over and they did their surveys, they have recorded it, and Historic England have got these on their Britain from above website. Seeing Britain from above means that I can see there's a dome, and I can see power and production and the transport building, and see what these look like from above, as well as the station. And collecting this information, I can draw a plan and extrude the buildings. And I will have a clip of me building the transport building right over here. After a couple of days, I had built my model in its fullness, and this allowed me to essentially walk around the buildings and the festival, something that I couldn't do today. Of course, it doesn't have all the colours and the features, but it has the forms, and that's key really to my illustration process. I was then able to walk around the exhibition and take viewpoints and sights for myself. And with a sort of virtual camera, which is essentially the screenshot of my computer, I was able to take a perspective. And one of the nice things about Google SketchUp is you're allowed to enter dates and times. And in doing a date and a time, I can use shadows, and then that can create very realistic shadows. And that light interplay I always enjoy with my illustrations. So I went round the sites and I sort of chose key points which I thought were really interesting. I chose the abacus, which is the idea of the science, which was coming about in that era. The idea of science and technology was very prominent. So I wanted to feature that. There was the Lion and the Unicorn pavilion, and that was all about expressing the national character. Then there was transport, which had a really beautiful sloped glass, and this allowed me to produce a kind of indoor-outdoor print. So I've got the glass here, which is shown here, sloping out, and therefore I was able to give a bit of distance, so I can see the edge of the exhibition ground, and I can see some other buildings, and that gives a bit more of a sort of throw through. I was also able to draw in some of the power and production buildings, and that was featuring fashions and textiles and the strength of textiles in Britain. When I produced a series, I had a variety of prints and a selection of colours and designs, but I decided I wanted to make it a bit more cohesive. So therefore I have rolled out, on the whole, 6 base colours. So we've got this sort of navy blue, a more cobalt blue, this vibrant blue sky, a sort of minted green and an orange. I chose this sort of blue sky colour because I felt like it sort of encouraged the optimism of the era. It's not very often that in Britain we have blue bright skies, but I felt like the festival promoted a sense of optimism and enthusiasm and positivity into the future, and this blue really reflected this. I really enjoyed with the shadows of the buildings that were cast. I was able to produce these really nice shadows, which just give really nice interplay and a beautiful texture to the designs. I produced these prints as giclee prints, and these are available in A4, A3 and A2 sizes. And I use a fine art printer, so always have really beautiful textures and clear colours which will last a very long time. These prints are available on my Etsy store, which I will link to below. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to share this video and the story behind my festival prints. If you think that there'd be other people that would be interested in this video, please share the video with other people. If you would like to know more about the festival print series, then please leave a comment below, and I will try and answer any questions that you have. If you'd be interested in subscribing to Circa 1990's YouTube channel, I share videos every week of my artist process. This is done in a series called The Studio Diaries. If this is something that would interest you, please consider subscribing.